Good morning everybody. This is a homemade video for Marita Kikit and all her followers to see what we're doing about this 2020 Live Aid global revolution which is exploding out of Perth. Now for 20 years the psychics and people in the New Age movement that deal with the spirit realm have been saying that a great global revolution was coming out of Perth. And folks, it's your Aboriginal granny who's going to be leading the way with the notorious Mick Jagger, New Zealand's most notorious gangster. And they're going to lead this revolution and you'll be very impressed with what you're going to see. So don't worry about the quality of this video. It's done on an iPhone in front of the laptop. We'll do it professionally later. We don't have time at the moment. So just follow us. Don't worry about the graphics. You'll see them come to life later. We're going to give you this PowerPoint presentation on a thumb drive. So that's what it's about. So join the notorious Mick Jagger. There he is. He's the executive sponsor for the 2020 Live Aid benefit concerts to rescue African children from sex crimes. And the purpose of this Live Aid, it is the 2020 version of what Bob Geldof did back in 1985, where they had 25% of the world's population watching the live benefit concerts, which were music concerts, the biggest revolution, live revolution in mankind's history, to be superseded by this one here, led by one of your elders, being our Aboriginal granny, Marita. So we're going to raise global awareness about the African continent. That's it there. You can't see very good, but you will do on the PowerPoint presentation we'll give you on the thumb drive. It's about the children right throughout the African nation. And the child sex crime continent of the world is what we have labelled Africa, and we will prove it using music superstars. And see this girl here, when you see the video of the proper PowerPoint presentation, got a tear down her eyes because of these horrendous crimes being perpetrated against little children right throughout Africa. And we aim to use the Live Aid Benefit Concert, 2020 Live Aid Benefit Concert, to expose it, and also the lead up to it, which we are starting right now. Here's one of the problems that is spread right throughout Africa, is the genital mutilation of the little girls' vaginas. These are little 5-year-old girls where they get their vagina cut to pieces. There is no reason to conduct this cruel process on little children. It's done and allowed to happen by politicians who are evil, and it's driven by religions and by tribes, and it's wrong, it's indecent. We're going to show you videos of the girls that have had these indecent, cruel acts committed upon them. And then we have the child rape that you saw on Nick Natanui's video we did about Nick, and he exposed it. And, also Madonna is exposing all this sort of thing, and Madonna actually cried when she saw what was happening throughout Africa, and that was on television. Also there's the sodomy on little boys is rampant throughout Africa, and the parents are forcing 5-year-old little girls into prostitution, and these things have to stop. The truck drivers are pedophiles having sex with the children, and the parents are handing the children over to have sex with these dirty dogs. And the same is happening here in Western Australia, which we are going to expose. They also have child trafficking throughout the African continent, and hence it's time for our 2020 Live Aid Global Revolution exploding out of Perth, led by the notorious Mick Jagger and our Aboriginal granny. So, and she, by the way, has the sovereign rights and ownership of the Noongar territory, and we're going to be bringing that one out. So there we are, the benefit concerts, what they're about, exposing these sex crimes right throughout the African nation. And It's happening here from Perth, like all the psychics were saying, right? Child sex crimes conducted here in Perth on our Aboriginal children under the age of 12 by Africans. They can do it in their own country. Why are they doing it here in Perth to our children from the Noongar Nation? We have 2,600 homeless children here, according to the statistics, ABS, and 2,000 there's 9,000 homeless, 3,500 under the age of 16, 2,600 homeless children under the age of 12. The majority of those are Aboriginal, along with some with their mums who have fled the home. Right, as we say, the majority are Aboriginal. They are the First Nations. This is their land. It does not belong to the Australian government. We are taking them to court under the trust, the law of the trusts, which overrides the law of the sea. So she will get back ownership of Western Australia, where the Noongar Nation is. So these young children and their mums who have fled the home because of the domestic violence, where the white man introduced alcohol into their homes and into families to destroy them on purpose, and now the government has got outlaw motorcycle gangs providing the communities, the rural communities, with drugs, particularly the meth. And the strategy is to destroy the families and keep them homeless and destitute. Hence why we have so many children that are homeless. But our problem that we have is these African youths have been provided with housing, and they've left our Aboriginal children homeless. They look after immigrants here, but they do not look after our Indigenous children. So what happens is when these children flee the home, they are befriended by what we call streeties, or street children, who take them to these party dens which have been set up by the West Australian government. We will provide video footage of the party dens and show you people going in and out of them and what's happening there. These are horrible places. The meth is being supplied by the police to these Africans. The police control 95% of the drug distribution, or the government controls 95% of the drug distribution throughout Australia, and we got that from the big outlaw motorcycle gang from America. That is the #1 gang on the planet, and their president said 6 months ago they control 5% of the drug distribution across Australia. The other 95% is controlled by government. Now the government's gotten greedy and wants their 5%. So it's the government that is supplying these party dens, and we're going to bring a lot of witnesses to say that the government is driving these drug dens and also the drug distribution, and all our underworld will stand up and speak about it. Now what's happening with these little girls? They've fled the home and then they're befriended by this rebellious street children who take them to these drug dens, which have been renamed traps, and that's actually what they are. Now the Maori person that provided us this inside information actually deals here. We're not given third-party information, but he cannot reveal his identity because he will be sacked from the charity he works for. So a lot of these Africans are former child soldiers, and you read up about child soldiers, you'll find they are very, very cruel and insensitive. Right, this is the sort of things it's like with the Africans. They do not give a hoot about little Aboriginal girls as they drug them in these traps and they're pack raping them. And it's the Africans that are leading the way. They do it in their nation, right across their nation. They do sex crimes and they get away with it because their politicians allow them to. And a lot of the time we're going to find out proof whether the politicians are actually involved in it. Our little girls here are being raped and they're being sodomized after they've been drugged, and they're dildos shoved into them, bottles. Anything cruel is what these gangsters on meth do. They find that it's very, very euphoric for them to show off to their friends how cruel and how tough they are, and they're seeking notoriety and creating fear like what gangsters do. And I'm the original Mick Jagger from Foxton. I'm the most notorious Maori gangster from New Zealand from the 1970s. We transformed our township of Foxton into the first gangland capital of New Zealand. New Zealand now has the highest number of patched up gangsters in the world. And we also, to go with that, have the highest assaults on women. I feel ashamed that I was involved with it. I'd have no involvement with them now, and they're now called the Maori Triads. Right, so we found, and because we know the underworld, these African gangsters are working in harmony with the government and the police, and it's the police drug squad that provides the drugs, and we will prove it. We will prove it through the drug networks, because with these indecent things happening to these little girls, even the underworld are coming in behind us. They are against it because of Agenda 21. Check it out online. The 20-minute video by Rosa Keel on YouTube called Agenda 21 Exposed, and you'll see what the politicians are really up to. So it's a political strategy to destroy Aboriginals. They've been doing it for a long time, and that dog there, female, is Michelle Roberts, and you can listen to the atrocities that she's doing today against our Aboriginal children in a joint venture with this one here who's in charge of the child health, the child protection, and between those two and the Premier, they seized the children 18 months ago from the Yamaji mob, and these children were the 9 families that halted the fracking on their lands, and they notified the government. The government went in and seized all their little children from all 9 families, and we have the video footage of the parents screaming and the children screaming. It's going to rip your heart out when you see that the stolen generation is now re-begun, because Australia is where they develop human rights abuses, and then clowns like Trump, when he found out what they did here with stealing the children of all 9 families, he duplicated it and he tried it on the border in Mexico. It's called tribalism, and it backfired, and even his own wife went against it. Now these mongrels here are doing it in the modern day, and this one here on the right, she stitched up these exact 9 families, saying they were committing child abuse, which was a pack of lies. We're going to expose it. We're going to blow it to the international community and create an absolute uproar about it. It is so indecent. The whole 9 families of the children screaming, and one of those families was the mum was a childcare worker in the childcare centre, and the police and the Department of Child Protection came in, seized her little daughter right in front of her eyes in the child daycare centre, and she was not a child abuser because she would not be working in a place like this. We have all the evidence, folks. We're going to blow the lid on this as part of our 2020 Live Aid revolution. That's going to explode out of Perth and blow the career of these redneck Australian politicians. And you know, you look at the crimes that's happening against our little 12-year-old girls and younger. This is how politicians think. We'll keep these Aboriginals living rough. 2,600 living rough while we build an $18 billion sports stadium to make money. And we'll build a $2 billion underground railway out to the airport, but stuff the Aboriginals. And we'll spend $30 million on refurbishing a church for the Catholics and stuff the Aboriginals. For $30 million, they could have housed all 9,000 of the homeless people here in Australia, Western Australia, right? And this is how politicians think. No, we'll get them drunk on alcohol, and we entice them into these drug dens called a trap. And then they can meet these African drug dealers and experience the rampant African sex crime culture that permeates the whole of the African continent. They drug these little girls with the date rape drug, and we're going to bring the witnesses to testify, the victims to testify, and when they testify, we will use another young person's voice, and we will change the picture, smudge it. So they are going to prove that they were raped and tortured. They had been injected with the meth, forced and raped by these Africans in our own nation. In their own nation, the Africans are invading. The government gives them priority housing over our Aboriginal people, who are the custodians of the land and the rightful owners. So our little girls get to experience the African sex crime euphoria, because they're gangsters and they get euphoric when they're pinging off their heads on this damn meth. And they think, and with gangsters, the crueler you are, the more respect you have. And this is why we don't like gangsters, right? We don't like drugs either. They inject these little children with meth. They transform them into crack and coke junkies for the rest of their lives. They destroy their spirit by being cruel, and they make them suicidal. How would you like to be raped and have dildos shoved into you as a little girl, and to have sticks shoved into you as they're all laughing and joking about it? Would you like that done to your child? Then why are Australians allowing it to be done to our Indigenous little girls? What will the politicians then say when our little girls commit suicide because they can't handle what happened? What they will say is, that's just another dead nigger. Because that's how redneck politicians from Australia think. And I just showed you 3 pictures of the worst ones. And here we have the child sex crime continent of the world, Africa, practicing their dirty deeds in our Aboriginal land. So, at least there is one decent politician who made a stand about this, and she's not popular because she makes a stand, she speaks her piece, and she has been saying, it brings tears to her eyes as she says, round them up, get them out. That's what Pauline Hanson, she's calling for deportation. Instead of having these damn politicians providing the Africans with housing, providing them with English lessons, providing them with drugs to use and inject on our little girls here in Australia. Pauline's calling for action, but they're not listening, because it's just another dead nigger in the eyes of these Australian politicians. Check that out. Check what Pauline had to say. These things have got to stop, folks. And you can't stop it from within Australia, so you have to make it global, attack the Africans as well, and expose them for what they are. So join Mick Jagger on the Live Aid benefit concerts to rescue African children from sex crimes. And it's the lead up that will happen in 2020 in November, but the lead up, we're going to be promoting it right from here in Western Australia, Perth, and it's going to explode right around the world, led by New Zealand's most notorious gangster, who's afraid of nobody, and the Aboriginal granny, who is the rightful owner and custodian of the Noongar Nation and her people. She's the representative. Right, so there we have the African nation. The poor little African children are also receiving the same darn cruelty. The sex crime continent of the world is Africa. And this girl, when you have a look at the PowerPoint presentation we give you, she got a tear running down her face. Because that's the way it is, folks. It's got to be brought to the global awareness. So we're going to teach you the Marketo storytelling system so that you can do videos, and don't go over 3 minutes. Just put them on Instagram, 3-minute videos, very, very effective. Then send everyone to YouTube videos that you can do there or you can send them to the website where we've developed a humongous website. has been developed with a massive back end to equal YouTube. And so you'll be able to send them through, they'll be uploaded to our website instead of YouTube. Right, because YouTube are doing evil things. So you can tell the story, send it through social media, link it through to us, and let's label Africa, the whole African continent, as the sex crime capital, as the child sex continent of the world, right? And you can piggyback off our famous people coming in, because Mick Jagger he's the executive sponsor for the Live Aid concerts, 2020 Live Aid concerts. He gets to choose which superstars perform, and there'll be about 100 of them that will need to back this project before they get accepted to perform in front of 2 billion people live in November next year. So the rappers and the gangsters will piggyback off the fame of the notorious Mick Jagger, and as I say, he's involved in transforming his township of Foxton to first gangland capital of New Zealand. That's where all the crime originates and where all the gangs expand from there. You can listen to it on our podcast, which is titled The Truth About 9/11. So follow our rappers, follow the gangsters, creating these rap songs to target and expose these Australian politicians, the Australian police, who are really, really corrupt, controlling 95% of the drug trafficking, and our little children are the victims, whether you are from rich families, poor families, or the middle class. Your children are victims, and we will be proving this with videos done the Marketo storytelling method. Right, so join also the competitions that'll be running, and if you enter the winner's circle, you can actually meet the famous people involved in this 2020 Live Aid global revolution as it explodes out of Perth, using the very best of the social media platforms. So join our revolution, folks. Follow us daily on Instagram. You Indigenous people, you can follow our Aboriginal granny, who has the sovereign rights to the Noongar nation, right? And then her people that she's pulling in behind her. You follow our granny, man, she's great. And for all you hoods, you gangsters, you underworld people, all you wannabe gangsters, wannabe rappers, you can follow Mick Jagger, the most notorious of the gangsters from New Zealand. So tell your story on social media, link it to the amazing stories that our music superstars will be putting out there using Instagram and sending people to the website, the Live Aid website. So you can watch 100 music stars join Mick Jagger, the notorious gangster. And then you can also, we aim to create an international outcry against these Australian and African political leaders responsible for the sex crimes against children. You got to go for the jugular vein. You got to rectify the cause. The cause are the politicians. Really, what needs to happen is the Australian federal and state governments, which are driving the drug distribution across Australia, need to be dissolved, just like they've done down in South America. They're dissolving governments. This government needs to be dissolved. The head of state, which is the Queen of England, needs to be removed and an Indigenous leader put in there. And the Parliament needs to be dissolved and handed over to our Indigenous peoples, the sovereign rulers of the sovereign owners of this land. It should be handed back. So join our Live Aid revolution, folks. Watch the economic impacts on the African continent as we expose what they are. Watch our elite sports athletes like Nui and the celebrities coming behind the notorious Mick Jagger. And watch us develop the prototype Live Aid Child Rescue Centre for expansion throughout Africa. And any nation that wants to stop us from expanding through Africa, the Maori Triad said they will pay 6 months or supply 6 months of free meth to all the meth users throughout that particular nation to cut up their railway lines and also the NBN cable. So there is going to be a massive backlash. Any company, say Apple wants to market iPhones in there, they will be put up on our website in bright lights. Do not buy Apple iPhones, and that's going to impact on any corporation that wants to go and do trade in an African nation that won't let us expand the prototype that we're developing here in Joondalup to be expanded around the world to rescue these little children in crisis and that are being raped, sodomized, and their little vaginas cut up at age 5. So watch what we do. Join our global online public forum, which are actually webinar technologies that we use, and we're going to you'll be able to interact with the revolutionaries in the webinar research and response discussions, interact with the superstars, with the journalists, and hopefully we can bring in Oprah. You'll be able to interact live online, and when we make a statement, you can tap on your keyboard and give us your response, so we can have 100 million people online and make the statement that the death penalty should be put upon these perpetrators of these sex crimes. If 80% say yes, we got an instant response. All right, so we're not relying on these politicians who are liars, and they're the most corrupt organisation on the planet. According to the Global Corruption Index, politicians are the most corrupt organisation on the planet. The second most corrupt is the police. Third most corrupt is the judiciary. And the other two are also politically linked. So there you have it, folks. You do not rely on politicians to give us a feedback response. It will be a lie. It will be deceptive. At the end of the day, the bottom line is they want to be able to say, that's just another nigger. And that's how they work, folks. That's how they think. So you'll be able to interact live online with the two main revolutionary leaders, which is the notorious Mick Jagger, and also the legal owner of the Noongar Nation is our Aboriginal granny, and we're going to prove it that she is actually the legal owner. Right, so the Live Aid public forums, our leaders, right, and there they are, two of them, operating out of a state house in Maylands, Perth, Western Australia. As we say, she's the legal owner. We'll prove it through her ancestry, right? Plus 100 plus music superstars that want to perform at the Live Aid concerts to 2 billion people using virtuality, augmented reality, and also hologram technologies. It's state of the art. And people are going to be so excited when they see it. The elite sports superstars and celebrities, we're coming in behind. And watch what happens, folks. Now, there will be no politicians or police allowed to be able to get involved. So we say, why would we invite the perpetrators of the actual crimes to provide the solution? That's barbaric, right? So, there they are, folks, your political leaders in Western Australia in charge of the drug distribution which goes through our schools, which is supplying the drugs to the Africans that shouldn't be here, and these Africans are perpetrating their sex crimes on our little children. So it's the people, for the people, to give a response, and the webinars were done by a webinar company and totally independent of us, so we can't change the statistics because we don't have the technologies that they have, right? Fully transparent. And also digitized webinar response feedback with 100 million people online or 1 billion people online. There's an instant response that shows how many agree, how many disagree, and how many don't care, right? At all times we can provide that information. Now, we'll also have the webinar replays uploaded to our website. You can check it and do your own research if you want. The website will be launched in February. It was constructed, it took 2 years to construct in India. It has a massive back-end infrastructure, and it has the cloud technology also used, and numerous different marketing systems embedded into it. All right, so join the notorious Mick Jagger and then watch the Live Aid benefit concerts. Now, as we say, the purpose of that is to raise, the event is to raise global awareness about the African continent. And what is the African continent? What are they doing to their own children? It's the child sex crime continent of the world is Africa, and they're spreading their tentacles right here into Perth, practicing on our Indigenous children living rough. Economic impacts for Africa. It's going to be horrendous. No tourists are going to go to Africa when it has this label to it, child sex crime continent of the world. And the condemnation and the international outrages, all the videos coming up to our website from Africa, from the victims, and telling how the little girls felt. That started on the internet now, and we'll tell you what those, and we'll let the little girls themselves, now adults, speak up and say how they felt when they had their little vaginas cut to pieces by a damn nurse or a religious leader or a religion or tribal leaders. Watch us scare trade out of the African nation that refuses to enforce the death sentence on all sex crime offenders, be they the parents calling in these nurses to cut up the vagina of their little children, be it the parents that are selling their children to these dirty drivers for sex, be they the rapists, right? Things have got to change folks. And it can be done from offshore, because if you do it from in Africa, you will be guaranteed you are going to be killed by their corrupt political parties. So we create conflict resolution, create the conflict, bring in the people through the webinar technologies to provide the resolutions, and then force these horrendous nations and get them where it hurts the most, which is trade. So we can stop the trade coming into their nations, and at the end of the day, the married triads who live in condos over on Hyde Park in New York, and also in condos over in the eastern states of Australia, they just put online through the dark web, which they use, and tell the local meth users in their particular nations, go and cut those railway tracks up. We'll give you 6 months meth. Here in Perth and Maylands, there are 52 pedophiles in Maylands, a suburb. In all suburbs in Perth, there is an average of 52 pedophiles per suburb. And the Maori triads have said, we will give 6 months meth to any of the meth users in Perth that get a hold of these 52 pedophiles in Maylands and cut their penis off and wear a mask and provide the video footage to the Maori triads, and the Maori triads will upload it right across social media using Hootsuite, showing these pedophiles getting their penis cut off, shoved in their mouth, forced to eat it, and left a life to suffer. That's the Maori triads. And Mick Jagger was an instigator in the development and creation of them, but he rejected them. He has had nothing to do with them for 45 years because he knows how cruel they are, but they're his relatives, and he avoided them for 45 years and caught up with them at his brother's funeral, and he told them about what's happening, and the Maori triads responded by saying, we'll give them meth. Those happy meth users. And 6 months worth of meth. It's uncut, it's pure, there's no dangerous chemicals in it, and the Maori triads have never gone back on a deal. So, those 52 pedophiles, they know where they live because the Maori triads have a copy of the police database, and they have a copy of the court system database, which got hacked by the creator of the dark web. Had one of her hackers hacked the whole system, which has caused a national security risk. Mick Jagger sent one of the Maori triads around to the number one anti-terrorism expert to his house in the dark of night. One of the triads turned up, handed him a document to tell him and to tell the Prime Minister of Australia that the Maori Triads do have a copy, and these are the sort of things that the Maori Triads are going to do. They have a copy of where all the SAS families live, where the anti-terror expert, how else did they know where he lived, and his wife panicked in the dark of a night to have this big Maori Triad rock up in the door in the dark, basically saying we know where you live, handing over the documentation stating what is going to happen when they start cutting up all the railway tracks that have gone through sacred sites, and cutting the penis off these paedophiles. And because they have the database, they'll have the paedophiles' faces put over social media so that the meth addicts or the meth users know where they live and can go and get them. Folks, that causes conflict, and it causes people to look for resolution, right? Child sex crime continent of the world is Africa, and when the Maori Triads give the same deal to the Africans, and the Africans start cutting the penises off these truck drivers and all these people committing these horrible crimes, there'll be a change. And as Mick Jagger says, he wants nothing to do with it. He disowned his relatives and the Maori Triads. He wants nothing to do with it. But they said they're going to do it anyway because they hate paedophiles and they hate anyone who commits a sex crime on a child. So the people worldwide from the African nations, they're going to have to clean this up. Vote the governments out of power that do not do what is right, what is necessary under the Mosaic law that Moses had. There was the death penalty for any sex crime, even for playing around on your wife or husband. It was death penalty. So the God of the Bible knew the best punishment, which was death. Why are these politicians allowing these cruel acts to continue happening to our little children throughout the African nation and throughout Australia? So these African political regimes, they are in for a huge shock when the peace marches start happening. No death sentence, bottom line, no trade, because the Maori Triads will cut up their railway tracks, will cut up their NBN cables, will target any corporate that goes into Africa to do business. And the Maori Triads are the cruelest gangsters on the planet. And you're going to learn what they do. You'll be horrified. So, the child sex crime continent of the planet. Death sentence because of genital mutilation on little 5-year-old girls, whether you're allowing it and handing your children over to it, or whether you're that rotten nurse that comes in to commit this crime, you will get the death penalty as well. If you don't, the Maori Triads will get you through the use of coalitions of indigenous criminal organisations linked by tribal roots. Child rape, you're going to get the death sentence too. Sodomy on little boys, which Nick Natanui exposed. Parents forcing their 5-year-old girls into prostitution, you're in for a big shock. And the truck drivers are going to have their penises cut off by people who use meth. Child trafficking, if you're an underworld organisation, you can be guaranteed that the Maori Triads are going to get you. So you need to stop that. The Maori Triads will show you better ways on making money. You don't need to traffic children. The Mosaic law was a death sentence. Thank you for your time, folks. Now watch Instagram blog number 6. The end. Have a wonderful day and think about our little girls here in Australia under 12 years of age, 2,600 sleeping rough, victims of the nasty African culture of child sex crimes.